Welcome to Saturday Newsday, your #1 resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. And oh man, does it feel good to finally have a news day, and we've got a lot to catch up on. Quite a bit of surprising and unexpected things have happened in the world of VR in just this past week. Like, Quest is finally getting a few things I've been wanting for a very long time. Better hand tracking, multimodal mode, and a complete UI/UX overhaul. And I've got a lot to say on all of those, especially when you consider Meta's recent announcement on their upcoming brain-computer interface. But that's not it. Sony has officially announced that PSVR support is coming to PlayStation VR2, and on top of that, a few new VR headsets have been revealed, and the Valve Prism? We got all that and so much more, but first, a word from this video sponsor, Sidequest. So you've probably heard of Sidequest before. I mean, they're only one of the largest VR game fronts out there, with thousands of VR games and apps available for download and, of course, sideloading. But you may not have heard that Sidequest has its own social VR platform, Banter, and to put it simply, it's a true Wild West VR social application with full physics integrations. It's kind of like if VR Chat met Boneworks, and it's pretty cool. And Sidequest is actually giving away a Quest 3 to this community within Banter, and all you gotta do is be online, either on a Quest, on SteamVR, or even just in desktop, and you might just be picked. Details are in the description in their Discord, so check it out. And if you haven't already, definitely check out Sidequest. There are hundreds of VR titles that you probably have never heard of before, and they're ready for you to explore. Alright, but we have a lot to cover, so let's just get right into the news. And I figured we'd start this one off with a technology that always just rustles my jimmies: the intersection of brain-computer interfaces and virtual reality. So I've actually covered a lot of BCI and VR crossover stuff in the past, but a lot has been happening in this space recently. From being able to control various parts of a VR chat avatar like ears entirely with your mind with a little piece of hardware, which definitely deserves a video on its own, to OpenBCI's own hardware leading to all sorts of published research ranging from robotic brain control to emotion recognition, to Neuralink making its way into a human for the very first time. In general, the space is moving really fast. But in terms of this technology reaching a consumer level and specifically for VR purposes, there's been one device that I've had my eyes on for a few years, and that's the Control Labs bracelet. Actually stemming from an old Meta acquisition from 2019, it's basically a wrist device that allows for neural input for usage in VR. And Meta's actually shown off this bracelet a few times now, the first showcase being all the way back 3 or 4 years ago when the company was first acquired. But it's always been a long way away until recently. Meta just showed off how the bracelet can enable full typing, finger tracking where there's no fingers visible to cameras, high fidelity scrolling input, and a lot more. Really, this tech just unlocks an entirely new control method while making existing ones like eye, hand, and even controller tracking significantly better. It's quite literally bridging the gap between the mind and technology. And while there's no product that I can specifically talk about yet, it is exciting to see that this is now finally trickling down to a consumer device, as Meta recently announced that this sort of wristband will be a shipped product within the next few years, which is way better than any estimate that we had before. And I want you to think about this device and BCI technology as a whole as we talk about the next few updates that have come to Quest over just the past few weeks. And I think it's pretty obvious to see where all of this is going, and it's really exciting. So just this past week, Meta introduced something called Wide Motion Mode. It's a hand tracking mode that expands on the hand tracking volume to be quite a bit wider than what was previously possible on Quest. And if you've ever used hand tracking on Quest, you'll know that your tracking space or volume is pretty limited, especially compared to controllers. And this wide mode solves a lot of that. But I think the more interesting thing here is how this wide motion mode is actually accomplished. It really goes to show how all of Meta's recent updates are coming together in a way that makes hand tracking significantly better and a viable control method. So right now, if the Quest cameras can't see your hands, then, well, it's not tracked, which makes total sense. This new wide motion mode, however, uses the previously implemented inside-out upper body tracking to recreate your upper body as a virtual skeleton. That information is then combined with tracked hands, making it so that even though the headset may not be able to see where your hand actually is, it can see where your shoulder and arm and forearm are, meaning it can pretty accurately estimate where your hand should be. Now, this also means that you're not going to get finger data from those hands hands while in wide motion mode outside of the tracking volume since the cameras can't see your fingers, but even being able to estimate hand location while way outside of the tracking volume is better than losing tracking. And this all comes together with another system that I'm really excited about, and that's multimodal mode. Unfortunately, at the time of this video, you can't use multimodal and wide tracking mode at the same time. I think that's eventually where we're headed, maybe in Hands 3.0, but still, each have some powerful benefits that we haven't really seen before, especially considering multimodal was just greenlit this week to be shipped in apps on the official App Store. But back on multimodal, it's probably the biggest thing that I've been directly looking forward to on Quest. It allows hand tracking and controllers to be used in conjunction with each other. So essentially, at least on Quest 3 and Pro again, you now have a fully tracked upper body with inside-out upper body tracking, a wider tracking volume for hand tracking, and controllers that are now tracked entirely separately from your hands, opening up a ton of possibilities. From using controllers to track objects, to strapping controllers to places like legs for possible full-body tracking. And I think most realistically, being able to use and build applications that use both controllers and hands at the same time. There are just things that controllers are good at, and there are things that hands are good at. Now you can take advantage of the strengths of both simultaneously. And who knows, maybe it won't be long before we're all walking around with controller holsters. And really, I just find this so exciting because this specific combination of hardware and body input is something that no other platform right now takes advantage of, and it's really powerful when actually used. Of course, it's up to developers to actually implement these features, but they're there, and it's awesome. But that's not it. There's one more thing that I've been wanting for a very long time now, and it's a refresh to the Quest UI and UX. And I think on the surface level, this is the more important thing for the Quest in the immediate future, and we're finally getting it. So as I've been spending a lot of time with the Vision Pro for the past few weeks alongside my Quest 3, I'd say the biggest takeaway from my recent review of the Vision Pro was that Meta just needs to take a second look at how they handle the user interface on Quest. A lot of the systems there, it's just hard to navigate. And again, it seems like this is actually happening. Meta just announced they are, quote, reworking some of the core UI infrastructure, end quote. Now, what this exactly means is still unknown, as the CTO of Meta also said these changes are some ways away, but regardless, just hearing that any changes are coming is some of the best news I've heard in a long time. And I think this is the more exciting part of Vision Pro's arrival. It's a super expensive device that I don't think even Apple wants you to truly buy yet, but the pressure of Apple entering the space results in things like this. Meta taking a look at their own systems, seeing what they can improve on, and then doing it. And I'm actually working on an entire deep dive video into VR UI and user experience, including making my own dream UI for the Quest, so stay on the lookout for that. It should be out soon. But I think we should move on from Meta. There's a lot of other stuff that happened, and I think this pressure from Apple and Samsung and Google is affecting more than just Meta, as what seemed like the impossible just a few months ago has just been officially announced. Sony recently made a statement that they are bringing official PSVR support to the PlayStation VR2, and this is something that I've been asking from Sony since before PSVR2 even launched, but it's coming, and hopefully sometime this year. Now, we don't have a lot of concrete information on this yet. There's a few different paths it could go down. Best case scenario is that PSVR2 just plugs right into a PC, maybe with an adapter, and we'll have full functionality of the headset within SteamVR, no PS5 required. But I think more than likely this is going to be a Steam Link style SteamVR streaming mode that uses a PS5 connection to a PC, either wired or wireless, which is a little less than ideal, but still, I gotta say, this is a huge step in the right direction. The PSVR2, while not perfect, has a lot of great features like OLED displays to face haptics to eye tracking. It's a good headset, and I think it will make a great PC headset. And I will also say that the PSVR2 has shown potential to be connected to a PC through third-party software, but that required prohibitively expensive and hardly available additional hardware to make that happen. So Sony's change of heart really turned an impossibility into a possibility, and at the end of the day, it's just good news for everyone. And of course, I'll keep you guys updated as we get more information on it. Oh, and I couldn't forget, speaking of PSVR, some of you guys may have seen this announcement: Valve's new headset. We've been waiting 5 years for this, but it's finally here. This is the Valve Prism, featuring some incredible specs with eye tracking, face tracking, 4K micro OLED displays, even onboard compute, allowing you to play PSVR games all without a PC at all. Yeah, unfortunately, this is a me break. That's not real. This was a prank that started at a furry convention a few months ago and eventually evolved into this almost legit looking website and fake announcement. I think the funnier thing is that a lot of people really took the bait, and I mean, it looks like a Valve website. It even looks like a Valve product resembling the little VR icon that SteamVR shows. But if you look into the details, you'll notice that Valve is spelt with an uppercase I instead of an L, which ironically makes it Vive. Either way, you know what, prank or not, it was kind of funny, if not just a little depressing, realizing that the Index launched almost 5 years ago. Yeah, honestly, Valve, if you could just make this and ship it, I think everyone would be pretty happy. But back to the news. A couple new headsets have popped up that look really interesting, each for their own reason. And I'll start with the Huawei Vision. Yeah, they weren't very original with that name, but at half the price of Apple's Vision, the Huawei Vision supposedly has the same near 4K Sony micro OLED panels as Apple's headset while being significantly lighter. Reportedly, this headset is also using an in-house Huawei designed chipset that is said to be built as a direct competitor to Apple's own M2 and R1 chip. Now, I'm not sure about any of those claims as the headset hasn't been out in the wild, but hey, I guess this is what competition is all about, right? I just would have thought, or I don't know, maybe hoped that Huawei could have thought of literally any other name than Vision. Like, there's a lot of words out there in the dictionary, but I don't know, maybe that's asking too much. On the flip side of things, a longtime VR developer, 3’s, has recently announced they are entering the hardware game with their own headset and a set of gloves. Now, you may not know of 3’s, but you probably indirectly know of them in some way. As the founder of Live, the original mixed reality capture tool that is still being used by content creators today, and You're, a fitness tracker app that was promptly copied graphic for graphic by Meta. 3’s and his team recently made public that they are working on their own hardware that is specifically designed for VR fitness. Right now, their main demo showcases their in-house gloves as the main control method of the headset, nicknamed V, short for Virtual Eye, and these gloves are pretty interesting. To tie together their previous fitness tracking attempts, the gloves can sense how much weight is being lifted, how fast the movements are, and ultimately track just quite a bit more accurately how much energy is being expended while being in a virtual setting. The gloves are also said to be compatible with other devices, so I guess you're not locked down to their own headset. And for now, I will say everything is really early for V and 3’s, but in a world where there are a lot of headsets and seemingly every one of them has their own strengths and weaknesses, it's an interesting take to see a fitness-focused piece of hardware, and I guess we'll just have to see where it goes from here. So far, we're only at renders and concepts, but it's interesting, and it's from a guy that's been in the space for a long time, so I'm keeping my eye on the Virtual Eye. Oh man, so what do you think? Quest updates are looking pretty awesome. BCIs are cool as they've taken a step closer to being on our hands and I guess in our brains. PC support coming to PSVR2, new hardware. It's a pretty refreshing time to be interested in VR. And actually, as I'm working on this Quest UI UX video, I'm curious, what are some things that you love or hate about the Quest UI, or I guess VR user interfaces in general? Your feedback and comments will actually really help me in the video that I'm working on, so definitely let me know. But of course, I wanted to say thank you so much to my Patreon supporters for making this video possible. There's no way I could do any of this without your support. And as always, don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.